let's go over the very basics of making an avoidance. I'm only going to cover like the very technical basics. I'm not going to cover making cool attacks. That's the subject of many other future videos. And keep in mind that this is just my way of kind of doing things. A lot of people structure their project in different ways. This is just like the very basic. So I recommend you read the video description because I probably missed some things later on in the video, and also download the assets like the song and the graphics so that you can follow along in Game Maker, which I highly recommend you do because that's like the best way you learn. So let's get started. We're going to start with like setting up the room, which is kind of like boring stuff, but may as well cover it. Actually, we're going to add our own background. Well, let's make it black. And then backgrounds, we're going to call this BG, I don't know. Load in our background, set it. We're going to uncheck tiling for later. In this room, let's name it AV1. We're going to have player start. And of course, blocks so we don't fall to our death. Alrighty, and then now, like usual, we're going to go to SCR set global options, make it so that start room is 1, so we start in a room when we start the game. Cool. Now, here's what we're going to do. I think the best way to organize let's first make a group for our avoidance actually. Avoidance 1, put all our objects in there. We're going to make an object called objAV1 control, and it's just going to be an invisible object in the room that kind of does all the main control logic for the avoidance. And this is just going to be placed in our room. Now, to do the music in an avoidance, if you look at SCR get music, normally this is like use guy rock here. I just turned it off because I didn't want it. If you look at these all play silence, no. Anyways, if you want the end room, like play silence, which is -1, but you want the avoidance room to not just play silence, but to not affect the music in any way, because we're going to handle that ourselves. Anyways, that's just how we're going to do it, because we're going to handle it ourselves rather than let the script handle it. So what we want to do, is add our room, case RV1, to also be -2. And now in the create event, well, first let's import our music, which you don't, by the way, I chose this song because it's catchy. You can choose whatever song you want. Yeah. In the create event, we're going to do SCR stop music, and then SCR play music, and false, because we don't want to repeat it. And what this will do is like restart it every time. And the reason we did this in here as opposed to here is because we want the music to be restarting, because then you can't do that in SCR get music. So and also in the step event, because I want to, you don't have to do this, we can do if not exists. This should be pretty obvious what this does. You don't have to have this if you don't want. All right, let's make sure this works. The avoidance I have planned is just like a really simple, like basic avoidance. It's sort of like it's like really generic and not fun. It's just like 5 seconds long. It's really simple. It's just to show you examples of attacks. All right, the music plays, and when we die, it stops, and it restarts. Cool. So, hopefully the volume is not messed up. Let me just verify real quick, so I can stop and restart the video if necessary. Nah, it's fine. Okay. Now here's basically how avoidances work. Let's make like a cherry circle spawn at a certain time. So in the create event, we start off t is 0, and you can call that timer or whatever you want to. And in the step event, if instance exists, and then now if t equals, I don't know, 50, we're going to create circles. This is basically how avoidances work. You increase t every frame, and because Fangames are a fixed frame rate, you're allowed to do this. and then check if it's equal to something, or check if it's greater or less than something. And that's literally all avoidance is. And then later on you can do if t equals 1000 room go to or end, or whatever you want. That's just like for later. That's basically how avoidances work. So I'm just guessing at 50. We're going to do scr create circle. It's scr make circle actually. This simple script comes in Yoyo's engine. It's like this, in case you're curious. It takes x, y, starting angle, number of projectiles, speed, and projectile. It's just like convenient instead of having to type this out. So we're going to spawn it at, I guess, 400 and 200. Angle. We want the circle to not be the same every time, so there's a safe spot. That's what this does. 20 speed. We're going to set it as like 6, maybe 7 actually. It's up to you. And then we could use object cherry, the object we want to spawn. The nice thing about object cherry is that, for one, it animates itself, but two, it destroys itself when you're out of room. So whatever object you create, you want to make sure it destroys itself when it's outside of the room. So instead of creating object cherry, I want my own custom sprite on it. So I'm going to make my own object av cherry1, and it's sprites. I'm going to add my own sprite. I'm going to check precise, click center, spr av cherry red, and the sprite's going to be this. Parent, we're going to set it to be cherry, and then nothing else. So it's just going to destroy itself inside of the room. But it's nice because I don't have to modify the cherry object in case I didn't want to touch it. Yeah, it's up to you. And then we're going to create object av cherry1. All right. So this should be a very basic avoidance fight. Like, I mean very basic. And we did it. That's how basic it is. GG, right? Straight on the wiki. So please don't. So we just had to guess at 50. Let's say this is actually too early. I wanted it to start after the first two measures. So like right now. So I could guess and say, oh, it's about 150, and then recompile the game and guess again, and then recompile the game and guess again. But that's forever. So the best way to do that is to do something like this. If global.debug mode and all right, and this should be straightforward. What it does, if you're in debug mode and you press space, it shows the time. So you can kind of press space when you're listening to the song, and then that'll tell you what time it should be at. So 2:03 it says. So also you can press, if you go into Yoyo's engine, you can go to set debug mode to true, and then you can press home to have God mode. That's what I just did there. So now this should be lined up. Let me just look at my plan here. Okay. Cool. Maybe like 201. I don't know. So next up is I want to make like a curving circle. Just because, I guess. If t equals, I'm just guessing for now. We're gonna do. Actually, we can just like run the game first. Okay. So 226. We'll do 225. I'm gonna do scr make circle. We can just like copy this. Or no, let's just do it like this. We're gonna make it at, I guess, I'm just guessing here, 600 and 300. Random 360, for same reason as above. I don't know, 12. Speed, same speed. And then here, we could modify this cherry to be curving, but let's make a new, let's like duplicate this one. And then in the step event, we're gonna do direction plus equal to 0 point, or we can do 1. Yeah. So, and we're gonna create object curve cherry, or av cherry curve. That's what we should name it. Okay. So hopefully this works. And this is how you do curving, by the way. You just add something to direction. You don't have to add one, you can add more or less to make it curve more or less. Alright, cool. So that's our avoidance so far. Let's make this at like 200, I guess. Alright, what's next? So we can also, instead of checking if t is equal to something, we can check if t is in a range. So I should have done the timing in here. So during the slide up of like the song, so between 338 and 384. 338, 384. So we're going to do if t is greater than this and t is less than this. We're going to do slide the view up. So view y view plus equal to 5. So this is pretty straightforward, but let's just verify it worked. All right, cool. So now let's make, what I want to do next is make a line of cherries at a certain point in time. So between 249 and we'll have it, okay, that's fine. We'll start it at 249. So if t, so what I want to happen is from this point, it's going to spawn a line of cherries directly at the player, and then it's going to stop after a little short while. So we're going to create a separate object. So object av1 aim player, and in this object, this is what we're going to create. And in this object, it's going to have, in the create event, we're going to set alarm 0 to be 50 or maybe 40. And then in the step event, in the alarm 0 event, destroy itself after a short while. And then while it's alive, we're going to do a equals 0, spacing equals 3, step event. A is greater. You can just copy what I'm typing here. And then here we're going to do instance create x, y object cherry, and let's actually make it a separate object for, because I want it to be blue, because I made that arbitrary decision. So let's go to edit, make it duplicate the sprite. How do you do this in GameMaker sprite editor? So like colorize, yeah, cyan. Okay. So SPR AV cherry blue. This is going to be object AV cherry aim. It's going to have no logic in it. It's just going to, or we can just call it 2 because it has no logic in it. Okay, and that's the one we're going to create here. All right. Now, in order to make this thing is just going to create itself and stay. It's just going to spawn here and not move at all, which is not what we want. We want it to first, here's how we do that. We're going to do var c, and then here's how we modify it. So c is now the one we just created, obviously. We're going to do c dot speed equals like 10, and then we have to put a semicolon here for reasons, and then c dot direction equals point direction xy object player dot x dot y. So if the player does not exist at this point, oh, by the way, this points from our point to the player's direction, which is sort of obvious. It's called point direction. If the player does not exist at this point, and this object tries to spawn something aimed at the player, the game will crash. So what we need to do is wrap this in if instance exists. So you have to be careful about that. Whenever you do object player dot, I already mentioned this in like previous 2 videos, but like don't forget. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it does work. So it's like kind of a lame attack, but like it kind of works. Let's make it a little more interesting. We can do plus random range -30 to 30. It's a little more interesting. It's harder than I was hoping, but it's more interesting than an aimed line, I guess. Ah! So we can decrease the spacing and increase it a little bit. Okay. I'm not worrying about the design or balance of attacks right now. By the way, I'm just showing you technically how they work. So if you're making an avoidance, or first let's actually change this because it kind of gets cuts off at the bottom there. We're going to do other outside room. So the cherry object has an outside room event, and what it does on that is instance destroy. And if we set this cherry as a parent, it will do exactly that, unless we make our own outside room event and then put nothing in it. And you can put this just to remind yourself it's there for a reason. By the way, if you put 3 slashes at the start of an event, it will put its name right here. It's kind of convenient. So now when it's outside the room, it does nothing. So it will not destroy itself. It'll just stay forever until you press R. But we want it to be different. We want it to be outside, where is it? It's somewhere here. Views, outside view 0. And view 0 happens to be the one Fangames use. So we're going to do here, instance, destroy. So now, this is sort of like advanced, but we're just like, anyways. We could theoretically not inherit from object cherry and just inherit from object killer, but I'm just showing you how to do it this way, I guess. So now they go all the way down here instead of being destroyed at that arbitrary point. Cool. Next is, if you're making an avoidance, it's usually going to be like over a minute long. And by the way, don't choose a song that's 3 minutes long. You'll thank me later. Avoidances takes a long time to make. So in our avoidance control, what we're going to do is have it start not at the beginning. You don't want to sit through the beginning the whole time to test an attack at the end. We're going to have it start at whatever point we want to. Here's how we do that. This is not built into the default engine, by the way. You can do global.avoidance or bug avoidance start time 0, and this is an SCR set global options. We're going to copy this, and in the create event, we're going to do after this if global.debug mode. We're going to do t equals this. So if we set this now to be whatever we want, it will we'll start at t equals this, and it will just execute the normal avoidance code, which is exactly what we want. So to set it to whatever we want is if global.debug mode word. You can make this whatever key you want. We're going to do this equals to get integer, and this pops this does a little pop-up window. Start time, and then start it at 0 in the pop-up window. It doesn't really matter. All right, so this will do exactly what we want, almost. The music will still be starting from the very beginning. We don't want that. So to do this, to fix that, we do audio, sound, set track position. What a nice lovely function name that is, by the way. And we're going to do global.current music, and this is actually set by SCR play music if you care internally in the Yoyo engine. So we're going to set the thing of that and the time to be t, not t, but t divided by 50, because audio sound set track position expects a number in seconds, and this is how we get seconds because we know we're running at 50 frames per second. So if I type in, it didn't work because I misspelled it. So if I type in T and then type in like 200, or let's type in 150, but you can see it works. So now I start here, whenever I press R, instead of the very very beginning, which is useful for testing attacks later into your fight. You will find this useful, I hope. So, is there anything else I was going to mention? I don't know. Oh yeah, if you want to, you can go into the draw event here and then do if debug draw set I don't know, 50 comma t, or we can do like, yeah, just t. And also we should do draw set line. Just for good practice. So what this will do is draw t. This can be useful. You can see t up here whenever you're playing the game now, which can be useful. So if I start at 150, you can see it does in fact start at 150 every time. It's up to you if you want that. I think that's about it. So, okay, let's go over our tools we learned. So in avoidances, we increase t by 1 every frame. If t is equal to certain numbers, we spawn attacks, or if t is within a range, we do some other action. There are also helper objects like our object aim at player, which we could include all of this like spacing and count logic and stuff like that inside our main avoidance control. But when you're making your avoidance, this attack logic is going to be very long anyways. So we want to like organize it. It's going to be super long. We don't want to make it longer than it has to be. So that's why helper objects are nice to use. Keep that in mind. You can also have different projectile objects. You don't have to always spawn the same object cherry 1 every time. If you want to, if you want to have separate logic for each of these, like curving is a really simple example, but you could have fancy stuff here. It's nice to have separate projectile objects, so keep that in mind. In terms of actual content, we learned there's like a basic circle, curving, target player, view, move the view. Those are the things we did. Those are super basic building blocks, and you'll learn many, many more when you're making avoidance. And you can combine these in interesting ways. Anyways, and for convenience, you can press space to print t. We also did draw t, and then you can skip to t equals x. This one's really convenient. So thanks for watching. I really hope this helps. Please send me a message on Discord if this helps, and if you have any recommendations for future videos, like if you want it to be longer or shorter, or you have any topics you would like me to cover, or any other feedback about the videos. So thanks for watching. Good luck making avoidance. I hope this helps you. See ya.